Revenge films.
My name is Melanie, and I'm almost 20 years old. I have been living with my family and my younger sister Nina since I was in elementary school. It was almost my coming of age, and I decided to write a letter to my father thanking him for raising me all these years by himself. Until my father decided to raise my sister, and I, as a single father, I had many challenges in my life. I don't know what I would have done if my father hadn't been there for me. I still remember this vividly. But when I was in the 3rd grade, my father moved elsewhere for work, and it was just me, my mother, and my sister living together at home. My father had to move far away for work, so we saw him rarely. I always got along better with my father than my mother, and I missed him so much. I cried for days after he moved, and my mother wasn't supportive at all. My mother seemed mostly annoyed that she had to take care of her 2 children on her own, and she took it out on me because I was the older one. Nina was 2 years younger than me, and my mother favored her over me. It was obvious. My mother was so cold to me. In front of my father, she was nice to me, but when he wasn't around, she was a completely different person. Now that my father wasn't around, she took this opportunity to be even more mean to me than before. She criticized me every day, and I had a hard time adjusting to my new life. Mom, when is Dad coming for a visit?
I have no idea. Why do you think about your father all the time? Don't you think that you're being disrespectful to me?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful.
If you miss him so much, why don't you go visit him on your own? You can stay with him for as long as you like. I'm happy living here with Nina.
My mother was just being cruel. She knew that I wouldn't be able to go visit my father on my own. I was too young. The only thing that I looked forward to were the phone calls from my father. He would call us every night after work. He was so cool like that.
Melanie, it's your father.
Yay! When I reached for the handset from my mother each night, she would whisper to me,
"Don't say anything to upset your father."
She would stand next to me the whole time and make sure I didn't say anything inappropriate. So I was never able to confide in my father about my mother. If I ever asked my mother if I could give my father a call, she would get very angry with me. I was only allowed to speak with him when he was the one that called me. My mother didn't have a job, so she was always at home watching over me. It upset me that I could only enjoy my phone conversations with my father under my mom's surveillance. One day, I really upset my mother, and she was livid. I had never seen her so angry. When I came home from school, I saw my mother was taking a nap on the couch. I was starving, so I opened the fridge and ate one of the 3 cakes I found inside. When my mother woke up and realized what I had done, she was furious.
I never said that you could eat that piece of cake. You should have asked for my permission first. What's the matter with you?
There were 3, so I assumed that one of them was mine.
Well, it wasn't. As punishment, you get no dinner tonight.
But from that day on, my mother stopped feeding me whenever she was in a bad mood. And that was most of the time. I would watch her and my sister eating delicious meals, and I was forced to sit at the same table with nothing to eat in front of me. It was unbearable. I had to live off 1 meal a day, which was the lunch served at school. The weekends were terrible for me because I wouldn't get to eat 1 whole meal. I had to go 2 days without proper food, and I nearly fainted because of the lack of nutrition. One evening, I was getting ready for school in my bedroom. Nina came over to me and gave me some of her leftovers. You must be hungry. Eat this before Mom sees you. That's so nice of you, Nina. Thank you. Now, hurry up! Okay. As I was devouring the food that Nina gave me, my mother came into the room. I tried to swallow all the food quickly so that she didn't see me eating, but she caught me anyway.
I can see the crumbs on your face. Nina, that was a very nice thing you did for your sister. But there really is no need for you to do that. Melanie can take care of herself.
Mom, Melanie is going to get sick if you don't give her any food. Nina started crying, and my mother hugged her and comforted her. And for the first time, my mother shoved me and hurt me. I was in shock.
Look at what you did to your poor sister. You made her lie on your behalf. This is all your fault.
Mom, please stop. You're hurting me.
I wish you disappeared. You make me miserable.
My mother yelled at me for some reason, and after that, she left the room with Nina, locking me inside. After that, Nina wasn't able to help me even if she wanted to. My mother continued not to feed me, and I was always starving. But I hadn't given up on hope just yet. I was waiting for the perfect opportunity to call my father when my mother wasn't looking. And one day, the opportunity came. It was a Monday afternoon, and school had finished early that day because there was a school event taking place. There was no school lunch served that day, which meant that I hadn't eaten in 3 days straight. When I got home, my mother was out to attend the school event for Nina. I decided that this was the perfect opportunity for me to call my father. But then I heard my mother and Nina's footsteps approaching me, and I hung up the phone before I got the chance to speak to my father. Because I was standing near the phone, my mom realized what I was up to, and she became red with rage. When I looked in her direction, she slapped me in the face and started yelling at me.
How many times do I have to tell you that the phone is off limits to you? Are you stupid?
I didn't do anything wrong. I heard you and Nina coming home, which is why I came out into the hallway to greet you.
Don't lie to me, Melanie.
My mother shook my body forcibly, and I was scared of my mother, who had become a complete monster at that point. She pulled on my arm and locked me up in my bedroom. She didn't let me out of the room, and by evening, I was starting to lose consciousness as a result of the malnutrition. Tears were streaming down my face, and the only thing I had to look forward to was tomorrow's school lunch. I then heard someone open the bedroom door. I was surprised and confused to see my father standing there. Dad?
I'm here now, Melanie.
Daddy! My father hugged me tightly, and I hugged him back. I was so happy to see him. I didn't know until later, but my father had signed the divorce papers and left them for my mother to sign as well. My mother was in tears, but at this point, I didn't really care for her at all. My father took me and my sister's hands and walked out the door together. We made a stop at the local supermarket, and he bought us some food to eat. It was my first meal in days, and I was in heaven. Everything I ate was so delicious. After I arrived to my father's new place, he took me to the hospital for a checkup. I was a little malnutritioned, but there was no big damages to my body, and my father was relieved. The doctor told my father that she was glad that he brought me here to the hospital before it was too late. My father gave me a gentle hug, and we went home to rest after that. My father told me later when I had tried to call him, I hadn't put the handset back into proper position, so I hadn't hung up the phone even though I thought I had. He overheard the conversation between my mother and I and realized that she was abusing me. He then came to pick Nina and I up soon after he realized what was happening. He left work in the middle of the day and hopped onto an express train. The first evening that Nina and I started to live with our father again, we told him everything that our mother had done to us. My father began to cry and apologized to us profusely for leaving us with an abusive mother.
I can't believe that I let this happen to you. I'm so sorry. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you.
I too cried tears of relief and joy. That evening, I was able to sleep without being hungry for the first time in a long time. Soon after that, my father arranged for Nina and I to start going to new schools. I was very excited to start my new life with my sister and father. My father reported my mother's child abuse to the police, and then he received a phone call from my mother about it.
What do you want?
Please, don't leave me. I need you in my life.
I don't care about what you want. Did you speak to the police about what you did to Melanie? I'm going to make sure that you get the punishment that you deserve. What you did to our daughter is unforgivable.
How many times do I have to apologize to you? I was under a lot of stress. That wasn't the real me. I don't have a job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me?
Well, your new home is in prison. It'll all work out. You have nothing to worry about.
How can you do this to me?
Regardless of how my mother felt, my father had already made up his mind about divorcing her. After that, my mother was arrested for her crimes of child abuse and neglect. My mother confessed to the police that she had abused me because I was closer to my father than to her. My mother's side of her family and her relatives wanted nothing to do with her after they found out about what she had done to me. There would probably be no one waiting for her after she gets out of prison. My mother never apologized to me for what she had done, nor did she even try to reach out to me at any point. I guess it was for the best. I didn't want to see or speak to her ever again. Nina and I are much happier living with our father. We were able to enjoy everyday life like most people. As I was writing a letter of gratitude in preparation for my coming of age, I was reminiscing about the past. The first half of my life was full of bad memories of my mother, but after my father came to save us, I had a happy life. Now I was able to stand on my own 2 feet. I was going to make it a point that my father is happy too.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.